My father is suffering from dementia. And, well, he's found love. He's found love in the strangest of places, but I have to fly across the country to get to my father to tell him he's being swindled. I'm 37, female. My stepmother, Nerissa, and her daughter Claire, 26, female, slashed my name out of my dad's will and put their own names on there by making my father believe I died a long time ago. But when I foiled their plans, my dad ripped his will and threw it into their face. Hey, everybody reading my post. I made this post because I needed to vent about this absolute crazy wild thing that just happened to me a couple days ago. I've lost my faith in people now, so that's cool, I guess. Anyways, let's get into it. Okay, so just a bit of context, my dad has dementia. He's in his later stages and it's a little scary. Honestly, but we're doing pretty well now. I'll tell you a bit about our background so you understand my situation better. My dad started his tiny business when he was around 22, after he completed his education in the United Kingdom. We're Americans, but I've lived most of my life in Britain because my dad set up his business here. Anyways, his tiny business worked, and he's extremely well off now because he worked his butt off in his 20s. His business grew pretty big after 10 years of going at it, so I've lived a pretty luxurious life. I had an older sister, Leisha. She passed away at the age of 26, 13 years ago, back when I was 24. She got into a terrible car accident, a classic drink and driving case. Thankfully, they caught the idiot who was driving under the influence on a Tuesday afternoon. Anyways, my mom and dad could not cope with the loss, and both of them had, severe depression. The whole ordeal was pretty gruesome and took an extreme toll on both of their mental health and, in turn, their relationship. Dealing with the aftermath of the relationship meant that they struggled with even grieving amicably. Watching those two fall out of love after the loss of my sister had been an indescribable, heart-wrenching experience. It was like witnessing the slow erosion of one solid foundation, a love that had endured countless storms, only to crumble under the weight of grief and sorrow. The house that used to be filled with laughter, love, and shared dreams and visions had suddenly become this depressing place of silence and distance. I'd felt this weird tension in the air all the time. The unspoken words and the unshed tears, if you can maybe relate, I don't know. It'd been kind of like if a chasm opened up between them, and they'd both been struggling to find a way back to each other, and it was like the loss of their daughter created a void that nothing could fill, and they'd forgotten the existence of their other daughter. Not cool, Mom and Dad. The pain and grief had become a wall that had separated them, a wall that had been too high to climb, and I have been left on the other side, unable to bridge the gap. I'd started to question everything I thought I knew about love and relationship. I'd wondered if this had been how it always ended, if love had been so fragile that it could be shattered by tragedy. It was like witnessing the destruction of a beautiful masterpiece, and I desperately wished that I could pick up the pieces and put them back together. I'd become a witness to the unraveling of their love story. I'd wanted to scream, to shake them, to remind them of their love that had once bound them together, but I knew love was not something that could be forced. It had to be nurtured, cherished, and protected, and sometimes even the strongest love could wither in the face of such profound losses. In the midst of that pain, I'd also learned about how fragile life is and the imprints of everything that we held dear, and it somewhat prepared me in a weird way for my dad's dementia diagnosis and dealing with losing him in that sense too. It had been a painful and powerful lesson that had shaped me in ways I could not yet imagine. I think somewhere they blamed themselves, and all that guilt made them snappy and mad with the world, taking each other down with every word that they said. They fought all the damn time, all the kicking and screaming, and eventually they got a divorce. They fell out and went their own ways, and eventually they both healed, but separately. We were living in the United Kingdom, and I joined his company, running it alongside him and shadowing him. Everything was eventually going great. I'd often meet Mom, who was also doing pretty well on her own. A manager at an, ASDA, until eventually she collected enough to start her own daycare, which is doing so well even now. Anyways, it was all going splendid until my dad sensed something wrong about himself and took a doctor's appointment. He was diagnosed with dementia and specifically Alzheimer's disease. He moved back to the US of A 6 years ago, and almost immediately after the diagnosis, where he was originally from. Funny thing, he never really lost his accent even after years of living in, British and breathing it. Anyways, I appointed a nurse for his full-time care of his choice, so I was on my own running the company. For the past 6 years, he's been less and less in touch with me, slowly cutting off all communications. It was a little too much pressure, to be honest. Not even having your father and your mentor guide you while you're practically handling all of his wealth. I honestly thought that it was the dementia and everything that caused us to lose touch and that he just forgot to call me. I would send texts quite often to him, for which I'd get left on read, but as long as he was seeing them, I felt safe and assured that he was okay. I would pass these messages through his nurse, and I'd constantly check up on him for his health, the progress of the disease, and just know how he's doing. Well, the nurse would help me and provide all my answers, but she'd never give him the phone to talk when I called her, giving reasons and excuses every single time. Not being able to meet or talk to your dad is feeling that both unique and universal. It's a void that's difficult to put into words. Imagine trying to live without the presence of your father and someone who should have been there to guide, protect, and share in the most significant moments of your life. I've had to deal with everything all alone these past few years, even though he was alive, and for me, it's not just about the physical absence, but also the emotional and psychological impact. I missed him in all those years, and I'd simply assumed the disease had taken him from me. There was a sense of incompleteness, as if I'd been missing out on a fundamental connection that others seemed to have taken for granted. It was like watching a movie with a key scene missing, leaving you with a vague sense of what could have been if he were okay. But it'll never be. The absence of a father can sometimes create a void that's filled with questions, doubts, and a hunger for answers. I've wondered what it would be like just to hear his advice and share my accomplishments and disappointments, and to experience those father-daughter moments that so many others cherish. It's a sense of what if that never really goes away. But it's not just about the void, it's about the resilience. It's about finding strength in the face of adversity. Not being able to meet my father was an emotional journey. It was a mix of pain and resilience, and longing, strength, and a constant search for understanding and connection. It was this weird, twisted reminder that life is not always fair. But we have the power to divine our narrative, fill the voids, and find our way, even in the absence of someone we should have had for support. Initially, he'd keep checking in on the company, but eventually he just didn't care at all, ignoring any comments I made about work. Our daily calls turned into weekly, then monthly, until he just never answered my calls anymore. I would always assume it was the dementia and that he was just too sick to call or occupied with his own things. I really love my dad, so this was extremely rough on me. I moved in with my mother in the United Kingdom because I needed emotional support to deal with the loss of my dad, even though he was alive. Dementia is so painful, not just for the patient, but for everybody around it. It's like you watch that person leave in front of your eyes, and eventually they're just a hollow shell of who you love. Gone, but still right there. That's when I thought these 6 years that my dad was gone, he'd lost himself completely. I started planning a trip to the US of A to meet my father, secure all his assets, and make sure all his finances were untouched and exploited. I made sure to finish up all my work and designate my team with enough tasks so that I could be gone for a month and everything could be running smoothly. This is actually the first time I've been away so long, but they're doing great without me, honestly. Obviously, I'm still watching over them and providing guidance wherever they need it, but it genuinely seems like they don't. It's been 2 weeks since I've been in the USA, and it's genuinely been such a long 2 weeks. This entire trip has been so hard on me mentally, but I did so right by coming here at the right time, before it was too late and my dad was too far gone. I'd coordinated with the nurse, and we discussed everything over the call before I got there, so she prepared my dad for it. When I got home, though, I had the biggest shock of my life. My dad was married. As soon as I stepped inside, I realized that there was a welcome party waiting for me. The nurse and 2 other people. My dad wasn't even there, though, so that was a little bit confusing. Then the nurse, Nerissa, revealed that she actually got married to my father 5 years ago, after a year of working for him. She introduced her daughter and apparently my stepsister Claire, who's like 26 or something. The guy that was there turned out to be Claire's fiancé, Graham. They were both very sweet and wholesome, and I talked to Nerissa and discussed everything about my father and what was up all this time. When I asked her why we couldn't talk often, she said he's extremely fragile, gets overwhelmed easily, and I demanded to see him. But she claimed he was asleep right now, and that it's hard for dementia patients to sleep, so I should not disturb him. I was a little sad. I could not immediately see my favorite person on the planet, but I understood where Nerissa was coming from, so I backed off and decided to enjoy the company of my new family, who all seemed pretty kind and warm. Graham had a very confused look on his face, and he even approached me once, but Claire got extremely uncomfortable and tried to drag him away from me and not let him talk to me. I just assumed that she was jealous or worried that there might be a spark between me and Graham, so I simply stepped away on my own. So Claire did not have to feel threatened by me or even assume the worst. I found it a little weird that she was so defensive and possessive, but I backed away regardless. If girls don't support girls, who will? Anyways, I guess I was off by a mile. She wasn't insecure or anything, she just wanted to hide the sinister stuff that these guys were up to behind my back. That night, Graham texted me on Instagram. I was a little weirded out at first because it seemed suspicious for an engaged man to be texting some girl at 3 a.m. I replied anyways, asking him if he needed anything. He told me that Nerissa never mentioned me, and it seemed extremely odd because he was close with my father, and he always said his daughter had passed. I just assumed that Dad was talking about Leisha at the time, but it turns out it was extremely complicated. He found it all fishy and thought that Claire and Nerissa were acting weird and jumpy that day. I needed to know more, so I invited him to a cafe to discuss everything because he said there was something else pretty important that he could only discuss in person. Well, Graham and I met the very next day, so he could tell me everything. What he told me shocked me to the absolute core. It turns out that somehow Nerissa had convinced my father that I'd also died with Leisha and that car accident all those years ago, and that's why we never talked. She'd convinced him that I died 13 years ago and that he'd been almost alone all these years until she came along in his life, distorting his perception of reality. Dementia causes loss of memory, language, inadept reasoning, and problem-solving and other thinking abilities that are severe enough to interfere with your daily life, as y'all could find out with a simple Google search. So yeah, his idea of these past few years was completely skewed. And he didn't know that he still had me. He thought all this time that I was dead. And that really broke me because, well, damn. I was so angry at Nerissa for putting me and my father through all that grief, and I was planning to burst at her the next time I saw her. But then I still had the question in my head. Why would she pretend I did not exist? Or why would she try to separate me and my dad? Then Graham revealed something that made me completely lose it. He said that only a couple of weeks ago, they'd made changes to my father's will, slashing my name out of it and adding their own. I found that completely stupid, to be honest. The company was quite literally mine. It belonged to me. My dad had transferred ownership ages ago. All he'd left were his assets for his own security, and mainly because I refused to have them while he was still alive. So, they made me lose like 6 years of a relationship with my father for some money and property. I was paying Nerissa to extort money from my dad. There was no way in hell I was letting them have it either. I was vengeful and willing to tear them apart. Graham said something along the lines of, "Wow, Stanley keeps marrying gold diggers. Poor dude." Stanley's my dad's name, by the way. I was really confused by that statement because as far as I knew, my dad only married Mom and Nerissa. So I asked him to explain, and he told me that Nerissa had told him and Dad that my mother kept trying to call and ask for money and stuff. What? My mother would never do that. Her ego is way too big to ask for money. Graham insisted that Nerissa always painted my mother as a gold digger, who my father separated from because she kept forcing him to give him money and kept wanting more and more of his wealth. I was fine that they talked crap about me, but they talked about my mother like that? Nope, nuh-uh. I was practically blowing smoke through my nose and ears at that point. I called up my mother right in front of Graham and explained the entire situation to her, and how Dad was being exploited and manipulated. My mother agreed to come over to America that instant and was willing to help me fix everything and make sure that those beggars got nothing from my dad. Nerissa and Claire would not let me meet Dad, still giving me silly reasons until I eventually got so mad and told them that I knew what they did. Nerissa just looked me up and down with a smirk and said something along the lines of, "I don't actually give a crap. It's better that you know so that I won't have to come up with this idiotic reasoning every time you beg me to let you meet with Stan." That wretched witch. Straight out of a movie or something, I swear. Anyways, after my mother arrived, she just straight up slapped Nerissa and shoved her out of the way, with Graham leading us upstairs with the key to his room. I heard Claire scream something about Graham cheating on her with me. She used a derogatory, misogynistic term that I shall choose not to use here, but it rhymes with dough, LOL. As we were walking to his room, as soon as Dad saw me, he panicked a little, getting confused and flabbergasted at the sight, but she eased him in and talked to him calmly, slowly reminding him who she was to him, and they discussed Leisha for quite a bit, and he apologized to her for ruining it all. They cried for a bit, which made me cry too. Graham just stood there awkwardly, and it was honestly hilarious now that I look back at it. Then he noticed me and asked who I was. Well, that stung a little, but I decided to push my feelings aside and explained how I was running his company in the United Kingdom, and reminded him of how he left me to handle everything after his diagnosis. I explained to him how he had been lied to about my death, and simply how I'd called like 1,000,000 times, but Nerissa never let me talk to him. He slowly came to his senses because he remembered my existence, but he thought I was dead all this time. He called me close and hugged me for a solid 10 minutes, I swear, and by the time he was done sobbing, Nerissa and Claire had entered. Nerissa tried to explain how she thought I was dead and didn't know I was alive in the first place, to which I reminded her that we constantly talked over the phone, and Dad told her to shush and told her that he was diseased, not dumb. She just closed her mouth and slunk back into a corner when he said that. Then Graham spoke up. He reminded my father that they had made changes to his will only a couple days ago and that he should review and alter any unauthorized or authorized changes made to it. Graham pulled the document out and read it out to my father when my dad showed some struggling in reading it all on his own. Dad asked for the will, and when Graham gave it to him, he tore it to pieces and threw the shreds at Nerissa and Claire, shouting how he could make a fresh one with a lawyer and his own very alive, very clever daughter. Wholesome, I know. Well, Nerissa and Claire just stormed off at the time, so I didn't know what they were thinking. Mom and I were quick on our feet, though, and we decided to take action ASAP so that Nerissa doesn't try to influence my poor father again. I had a friend in the APS, so I called him up and asked what I could do in such situation. We had a nice long conversation about my options legally and what I could do to ensure the financial safety of my father, which meant me being my father's power of attorney. So I took action, and the legal system is doing its thing now. Nerissa is currently facing charges for elder financial exploitation, which is a Class 1 misdemeanor here in the good old US of A, so it's pretty serious. She's probably going to go to jail, which is exactly what we all wanted. I don't know about Claire and what she's going to do after this, but she seems pretty unfazed about everything, almost nonchalant. Is she a sociopath? I'll never know, nor do I care. I'm just happy she's staying the heck away from my father. Her role in the entire situation remains a mystery to us. So while we're aware of her involvement in this whole deception, we're choosing not to pursue any legal actions against her. Ryan, my boyfriend back in the United Kingdom, is asking me when I'm coming back, and he thinks sending Nerissa to jail was a bit harsh, 'cause she did take care of my dad all these years, and he expects me to respect that and just get her to leave. I don't think I'm being harsh. I mean, what do y'all think? She did jeopardize the relationship between me and my father, put us both through mental agony for 6 entire years, and shame my mother, and try to siphon all my dad's assets. So, respectfully, I think I have the right to be a bit furious. Anyways, but I still want to know whether I'm being unreasonable or harsh, so that I can reassess my morals and try to be a better person. I don't care about the morality this time, 'cause I don't condone crime. But Ryan's got me thinking about whether I should be a better person. Update number 1. Hey guys, thanks for all the sweet, wholesome comments. I really needed cheering up and some fresh perspective after being so heavily involved in the situation. I appreciate the suggestions and advice, but I honestly don't think there's any point anymore, 'cause it's pretty much over. I don't see how some of you concluded that I should have helped Claire get back on her feet, and that it wasn't her fault, but I appreciate that y'all took the time. I've broken it off with those conniving gold diggers anyways. But, I'm here to provide an update. After the whole debacle in Dad's room with Nerissa, Claire, and Will, my dad and I had a talk. He's still in there, somewhere. Though it makes me sad how much he's lost himself, I decided to spend a bit longer in America, letting my team handle everything for a bit more, and my father and I embarked on a journey to rebuild our relationship because due to Nerissa's psychotic actions, something so pure between us has been marred by lies and manipulation. Not that, he remembers much of what he were told anyways, but still. It was a pretty challenging process, but I'm glad I took the chance to help him recover the deep bond that we shared before our separation. The very first step I took, though, was to ensure my father's well-being and financial security. I hired this reputable lawyer who specializes in elder care and estate planning to help Dad draft a new will. One that'll protect his assets and make his intentions crystal clear. Mom and I were both involved in the process this time around, and he expressed his wishes without any undue influence, and to finally properly address the effects of my father's dementia while I was in the same country, I sought the assistance of some professional caregivers and support groups, both of which are proving to be invaluable. I don't know why I didn't do this earlier. To be honest, and these resources have really helped us understand the disease better, and they have taught us strategies to cope with all the struggles that come along with dementia. Despite all this pain from the past 6 years, we knew that our bond was rock solid and had pretty much endured a lot more before the dementia, anyways, and manipulation had taken its toll. We started out by spending lots of quality time together, reminiscing, and it was mostly him listening and me reminding him about our experiences and cherished memories. Mom being here has also played a huge role in his recovery, and, her unwavering love and support were the biggest source of comfort and reassurance for him. It was equally heartwarming to see them reconnect and rebuild the connection that they had been so strained for so long, as it was heartbreaking when they split. Over the past couple of weeks, my father's mental state has improved quite a bit, and we've cherished every moment we've had together. We've spent literal days chatting about him, whether he loses his train of thought quite often or not. We went on walks, shared loads of laughter and tears. In my opinion, the whole process of rebuilding our relationship is kind of a testament to the strength of our connection and our ability to overcome adversity, even though he's old and funny. Also, guess what? Graham told me Claire's gone to Malaysia. So obviously after whatever happened they broke up, but he heard from her best friend that she had this long-distance relationship with this super rich dude from Malaysia all this time, even when she was engaged to Graham. So she's gone there, and they've apparently gotten married. Good for her, I guess. I hope that she has a good life and doesn't have to look back ever again. Even though she's a swine of a person. Well, Narissa's in jail, by the way, so hopefully that chapter is over. I've been thinking of moving my dad to the United Kingdom again so that I could maintain my relationship with him. Mom's taken on the role of his primary caretaker, and she's willing to take care of all his needs as long as they can be in the UK. So, she could do her daycare too. Okay, that's all for this, guys. I want to say bye. Also, do y'all think I should shift my dad to England? Or no? I'm a little split on it. So I'd appreciate an outsider's perspective because moving an elderly patient could be a huge change, and I don't want to hurt him. Update number 2. Hey guys, guess what? I moved my dad to the UK, and now we all live together. My parents are together, but my dad's health is deteriorating. They both look so in love, and my dad is happy. Though he's struggling with memory and slurs his words often, it's fine though, as long as he's happy, you know. You know who else moved to the UK with us? Graham. He's joined the company, and Claire's loss really hit him hard. So he's been doing less than well, and though he's getting better now, things are really looking up. He's pretty smart, and he helps me with the legal challenges that our company may face, reads through all the contracts' fine lines, and helps us stay in legal aspects so that we never hit a speed bump. In other news, Narissa's somehow out. She called Dad hoping to meet him and reconcile, but my dad had forgotten who she was, quite literally. So my mom took the phone over and berated her for a good 30 minutes. She dissed her entirely and made sure that we would not be bothered again. Mom 2, Narissa 0. Yep, that's it. Bye, guys. Final update. Hey, I'm back with something. I wasn't going to update, but I thought I would add this. It's a little sad. My dad passed away. His passing was a profoundly somber chapter in my life that left me with a profound grief and a deep well of emotions that seemed impossible to navigate. It was a moment I dreaded since the day he was diagnosed, and even though I tried to prepare myself for it, nothing prepared me for the overwhelming sense of a loss that followed. The days leading up to his death were painful. The disease progressed to the point where he couldn't really recognize me. His spirit was dimmed by the relentless onslaught, and it was painful to watch the person who had been my mentor, protector, confidant, slip away. The final moments were kind of a blessing and a curse. On one hand, his suffering was over, and he'd been free from the confusion and frustration that plagued him for so long now. On the other hand, it meant saying goodbye to the man who had shaped so much of my life. As his heart was quite literally giving out, I tried my best to show all my love and gratitude and appreciation for everything that he's done. Even though I knew he couldn't understand the words I needed to say to them just to provide him with comfort in this final moment. It was as if a part of my own identity was torn away that second, leaving a void that I knew could never be filled. The tears flowed freely, a mixture of relief that his suffering had ended and an overwhelming sadness it was gone. In the days that followed, I was grieved. It was a heavy, ever-present weight that seemed to consume every aspect of my life. I grieved for the time that we had lost during his illness and the moments that would never come to pass. Ryan refused to leave my side, and Graham and Mom made sure to provide the utmost support and unconditional love, but amidst the grief there was also a sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the years that I had with him, for the wisdom, the love that we shared, and for the indelible mark that he left on my life. I realized that while his physical presence was gone from this world, his influence and his memories would live on forever. Elder exploitation. That must be a serious crime to get charged with, and all the other charges that were starting to rack up for this family that was taking advantage of OP's father. I mean, I couldn't even imagine being in that position. The only good thing that came of this entire story was the fact that OP got to live the rest of OP's father's life with OP's dad. So it ended pretty happy on that note. But either way, I do want to know your thoughts about this story. Maybe a loved one or somebody you know has been through a similar story. If you want to share it, drop it down below in the comment section. Guys, thank you for joining me on today's story. My name's Mr. Reddito if you're new to the channel. I hope to see you tomorrow. I hope you have a fantastic day. And just remember one thing. It's cool to be kind. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.